we'd now like to open the floor for comments. Please go to the microphone. And we have about 15 minutes, so we'd like to ask you to please make your comments as briefly as possible so that we can have as many people speak, and also to introduce yourself as you speak.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lauren Goodsmith. I work with Communication for Change. I'd just like to comment a little bit about what's been said about using video specifically to tell and to share women's stories. My comment also harks back to just after the previous panel when Sarah Stewart, the Director of Communication for Change, spoke of the importance of women representing themselves, and that Janice pointed out that the corollary, very vital need for their self-representing statements to reach decision makers. I'd just like to suggest that while it's really essential to reach out globally to share and to gain information, change so often begins at home, and many of the decision makers and gatekeepers in so many communities are on the village council, living next door, maybe in the home of the woman who is seeking to change her life. Local initiatives like community-based video are increasingly feasible and affordable, and Communication for Change has actually trained teams of women in India and Bangladesh and Egypt to create their own videotapes that are participatory, filmed in the communities. These videotapes represent their concerns and needs on issues such as female genital cutting, girls' education, and spousal abuse. And these tapes are then used in community-based discussions to, among other women, girls, youth, leaders, men within the community to spark discussion and change. So
I'm sorry, we have a long line of people, so if you could bring it to a close.
So I'd just like to suggest that it's important not to overlook the closest audiences and use technology tools to promote local dialogue. Thank you.
I'm Hartley Torrance from the Associated Press. I had a question. We've been talking a lot about activists and activism and what internet ICTs can bring to women activists across the world. I was wondering what needs to be done to bring it one step forward. Women. Not necessarily women activists, not necessarily women groups. Just ordinary women who want to have access. And what can it bring to their lives? What do we need to bring it to them?
Thank you. I'm going to take a series of questions and we'll let each of the panelists pick up on the ones that they would like to respond to what we find. Next. Thank you.
I am Fatima Bossar. I am from Turkey. I represent been abused for that end. When Ms. Caldwell clarified that the video of Bangladesh was put together by them, my skepticism sort of subsided and said, okay, this is okay. But I'm so used to being on so many women's listservs and getting, especially regarding the Taliban, petitions, articles that some are misrepresentative and some are very offensive, but all in the name of empowering women in developing nations. And so would any of you or all of you please speak about the power dynamic that comes with technology in your project specifically, not just along gender lines, but along north-south relations. And could any of you speak to the double bind of wanting to be critical of your nation's discriminatory policies, but yet also wanting to protect the sovereignty and dignity of developing nations and Muslim societies?
Thank you. Well, I think that question could be the next whole day's symposium. But I will ask each of the panelists to take a minute if they would like to respond to any of the questions, and then we'll bring it to a close with a lunch break, reminding you that during the lunch there is conversation time for all of you with the panelists and with each other. So we'll just go in the order. Do you want to?
Just to comment on the representation, the images of women, really, this is a very big issue. I mean, we have, in the Arab world, we have two conflicting images that are being continuously projected through the media. The one is the traditional submissive, ignorant woman, and the other, I'm trying to categorize, really characterize it. And the other one is the imported image of the woman sex object. and you're really always being, so one of the tools that we have developed, and we have found that it is very effective, is a tool for critically viewing the image of women that is being projected in the media. This is to sensitize women to reject these images. I mean, it does not reflect the image of the present-day woman, or in whatever line of work she is. So starting by critically looking at these images would help women to be conscious of where they are vis-a-vis these images that are being imposed on them through the international media and local media. And local media is still controlled by men.
I can speak just to what we've covered at National Public Radio in terms of what you mentioned. We have covered that story about women in Turkey not being allowed to enter institutions. It wasn't necessarily a story that Jackie and I did, but NPR has covered that extensively. And I think both Jackie and I are extremely sensitive in making sure that the stories that we cover are stories that are basically rooted in, the situation that the women are in. I mean, the women that we talked about, Shabla Sherkat, or other women who are at the forefront of bringing change, they are practicing Muslims themselves. And that's why it's even harder that they're trying to make these changes within, a system of government that has, as Memradi's Carr said, these old cumbersome customs in place. And so we always try to make sure that it's the voice of the people. We don't, and also I think one thing that we've done well is that we have profiled professors in Iran, professors of literature. We profiled journalists, politicians, sculptors, writers. We're not just profiling women who are you can add to this, but we're not just profiling women who are in a really desperate and dismal situation, who have no rights. In fact, we are saying that the women are doing a lot of fascinating things. And so when we first started doing these stories in 1995, a lot of people felt that they were learning something they hadn't heard before. So we're very conscious of being sensitive.
Thank you.
I'll just add very quickly. I think the point is well taken about trying to get people to tell stories in their own words, and that's something we're going to speak to. It's certainly what we need for the radio. It isn't always possible to do that, to then disseminate that, because you still have to shape the story by the constraints of any news organizations. Power the press goes to those who own it. That's something we try not to do. But I think to be too overridden by our editors. But I also think the comment was made to me in a panel elsewhere earlier this week about why do women want to know these stories? Why are there so many women reporters of these kinds of stories? And I think that's something that we all need to think about. One colleague of mine says, because women are good at getting into these interior spaces where men sometimes can't go. I think that's useful. I think it's only a part of the problem. I mean, part of the answer. I think the other part of the answer is, as women, we like to unwrap, unlayer the complexities of meaning in all of our societies. And, I find that to be perhaps a more, certainly not exclusively female, but, it can often be a female approach, because that's how we live. And I think all of those things become the architecture of how we tell these stories.
I just wanted to comment, a number of people, it's a consistent theme, this whole issue of how it is that you empower people to speak in their own voice, and how it is that you deal with the issue of mediation, not just in terms of accessibility to resources, but north-south dynamics. I find in our work, resources really play a very big role in our ability to ensure and enhance the capacity of people to tell their own stories. We're working with a full-time staff of 3, and we've just barely got a loaned editing facility on site. We're working hard to generate the funds to bring people on site so that they can work with the material they've already shot to edit their own pieces, and to generate locally based centers and to connect them to media centers on a local level so that they can get involved in editing and developing their own story. In the absence of that, what you find is that you're back and forth on the phone and on the fax, with a draft script and talking to them, and it just simply doesn't work the same way. And I think that one of the things that Lauren Goodsmith references, the process, the significance of the process. It's a very difficult way to measure change, and it's a very difficult thing to talk about because it appears ephemeral, but I think the process of telling a story, and particularly the process of developing a visual literacy, which is very different than developing literacy with words, is a process which is really important and which can really radicalize people and communities and relationships. And that's not something that's easy to talk about, and that's not something funders get, frankly. The point with them is always, what results? What were the results? And, you can generate results as well when you go, when you move outside the community and get the international audience to focus. We just did a piece with 2020 in a partner group that resulted in a commitment to address problems within the psychiatric facility in Mexico. But that underestimates the significance of what's happening on a grassroots level in terms of how people are interacting with that particular issue and all of the dynamics it raises. So I think the real challenge is the resources, getting groups the resources that they need and the training that they need to be able to really take a project from A to Z.
Thank you. I just would like to pick up two things. A lot of people talked about local initiatives. Yes, it's very important to build on local initiatives and to build on local projects. It doesn't make any sense to bring anything from outside, and there is a real need of ownership when it comes, especially when it comes to information technology. And to get this ownership, of course, you need training, you need education, but again, you need this vision and this policy to really build up. Another comment was about what can ICT do for ordinary people. That's all about it. It's for ordinary people. It's not for people who are already IT literate. And I can give you some example in Morocco. For example, we used information technology to try to empower, at least to help women in traditional handicraft. And we developed portals for them to inform and to have commercial transactions through e-commerce to sell and to reach markets that they could never reach if they didn't use information technology. The second project was related to the creation of entrepreneur center for women to help them not only marketing their product, but also to create a forum where they can talk about new process, new product, and such things, And this is very important. And the point is that it is subsidized by the government of Morocco, because it was a way just to give a kind of push to that. And then it has to be sustainable, of course, but it's a facilitation. And I don't think that the government should do more than regulate, facilitate, not control, of course, and initiate and catalyze. And this is it. The dynamic has to come from elsewhere, and the dynamic has to come from the national market and from the private sector as well. The third point I wanted to underline is all the initiatives, and thank you to give me the opportunity to know about what you have done, and you have done. Those are very important because they are showing and helping women in very difficult situations. But I would love if mass media can also show success stories as well. It's very important to create hope. And this is a part of the image that we are projecting. And coming back to Arabic women and Muslim women, those are not only who are failing or who are having problems. Arabic women and Muslim women are those also who succeed in leading, who succeed in politics, who succeed in research, who succeed in private sector, and I think this is very important. And it is very, very important as well for the mass media to have a kind of marketing also that they can make it. And look, those have made it. And so you can as well. It's not only those who fail, but also those who succeed.
Thank you for ending our panel on the positive note. And I want to thank all of the panelists for stimulating examples and challenges for the panel. Do you want to make any announcements about lunch, or people just go? So just go from here and get your lunch and sit in this area and talk with other people. And the session will resume at 2:30. Thank you.